Hi everyone, thank you all for joining today's webinar. Topic of today's discussion will be donor optimization techniques with IBM Analytics. Learn how to increase your fundraising effort. I'm just going to take a minute and quickly go through today's speakers. We have Alexander Oftali from IBM, who is a subject matter expert. Monique Dozier from MSU. Jim Coyne with IBM. And then we have Tim Krasak, who is the CEO of Ironside. One quick thing today during your presentation, or during the presentation, any questions that come up, we ask that you please just type them into the box on your screen, and I'll moderate all questions at the end of the webinar. So today's agenda, we're going to discuss industry and IBM perspectives, Michigan State University use case, customer insight analytics use case, university fundraising, and then go over prepackaged predictive advancement action at PBA. So Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking to you today actually from Baltimore. I was doing some workshops here on predictive analytics at the Mid-Atlantic Researchers Conference, and it was fun meeting a lot of fellow colleagues in this space yesterday at an event. And when I like to meet people for the first time, I always like to kind of ask them, instead of where are you from or what do you do, I like to ask them what they're passionate about, because I think you get a lot more interesting answers, and people might share it's their family or a hobby or something like that. So not surprisingly, my answer is analytics, right? So this is what I'm passionate about, and I'm really excited to meet all of you today. The reason I think we're all kind of here to have this conversation, which I think is going to be a really important one, and there's some great things that Monique and Tim are going to be able to share, is that there's really a sense that there's shared business challenges and blind spots in fundraising, right? Higher education, obviously, I think a lot of us participating today come from that space, but it doesn't matter if you're higher education, healthcare, community arts, social services, environment, so forth. We all kind of share some shared challenges around, some of the blind spots for us organizationally. And so on the screen in front of you are just a list of a couple sample questions that I hear, pretty regularly. So these are questions that leadership and frontline staff within organizations have. But, previously, kind of pre-analytics, and it's still in a kind of a nascent stage in this space, but pre-analytics, they would just kind of use rules of thumb, or maybe like heuristics, or what we did last year, or what I did at my previous organization, to kind of inform strategic decision making about where programs need to go. And so there was no insight around who's going to renew, who's going to upgrade, how long will it take us to reach our goal, why do people give and lapse. And so what predictive analytics has been able to do is it's been able to allow us to kind of draw reliable conclusions about future events, and really address some of these problems, not only in a kind of a strategic way, but in a very quantified and actionable way. Krista, can you move to the next slide, please? And so, one thing I always want to stress when I meet with people and we talk predictive analytics, particularly in the fundraising space, is, I have no aspersions, and I don't think anyone else on this call does, to say that, we're just going to really quantify fundraising and make this kind of really a scientific process. Because it's, at its core, all the analytics work in the world can't replace a compelling message and building relationships, right? So that part will always be, elemental and fundamental to successful fundraising. But what analytics can help us do and help us become better fundraisers is we can really move beyond being reactive, kind of basing it on the gut feel and having kind of a static process, to being really more proactive and dynamic and kind of, looking forward. And the way I want to talk about this, and maybe kind of a distinction to share, is we're talking about predictive analytics today. And so this is different from, for example, descriptive analytics and business intelligence and reporting, right? And so that's an important key function of any development shop. But predictive business intelligence and descriptive analytics reporting, that's kind of like driving your car and just looking through the rear view mirror and maybe out the side windows, right? So it's what happened and maybe kind of like a real-time sense. And so what we're really talking about today or focusing on is the predictive piece, which would be going back to driving your car. This is looking through the windshield. So where are we headed as an organization? Where are our top prospects? What are some things that we should be aware of? Should we be turning our car to drive in a different direction and so forth? So this is really kind of the goal that I think a lot of organizations have have set for themselves. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of making that goal a reality for you and achieving predictive analytics within your own organization. And next slide, please. And so, with the examples that are going to be shared today, IBM really believes that kind of the predictive analytics process falls in a pretty fundamental architecture, which is alignment, anticipation, and action. And these are all kind of key components. And we're happy to share today how IBM has solutions and certainly partnering with a great business partner and expert with Ironside, that we can help you achieve this kind of architecture for your organization and really make your data work for you. And if you go to the next slide, Kristen, the whole reason that we're looking to do this is IBM really strongly believes in kind of moving past, kind of the traditional approach that we have today, right? So this is using, maybe a lot of descriptive data and transactional data, and that tells us who and how. And that could be predictive, but that's still somewhat limiting. And so what's more interesting or more compelling is being able to answer questions of what and why, right? And so that gets past this kind of actions that have already happened, but it allows us to tap into ideas and concepts around motivation, what causes people to do or not do certain behaviors. And when we truly understand that, then we can build, what at IBM we like to call a 360-degree donor view. So it's kind of a complete or holistic view. And just a couple examples of data points included on your screen, but this is stuff that, especially for a lot of larger higher education institutions, healthcare institutions, larger nonprofits in general, this is data that you already have tracked, or you have the ability to track. And so what we're talking about here today is making all this different kind of data work for you in a positive approach. And Kristen, if you can go to my next slide, please. And when I say we're making this data trying to work for us, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to make the data work for us, work for everybody, right? And so this is another kind of maybe common misunderstanding around predictive analytics, is that this is a process for perhaps someone in research, or this can feed information to major gift officers, maybe some frontline staff, and that's kind of the limitations of where predictive analytics can be applied. And that's really not the case. And so predictive analytics as a practice, as a fundamental core business process can really empower just about everyone across an organization, especially like a larger shop, right? So research to leadership, budgeting and planning. I was working with a client in Boston, which is a very dense and high demand market for major gift officers. And we use predictive analytics in their human resources department, and we would do surveys and employee engagement. And so they were concerned around, our major gift officer is going to leave because there's lots of demand for major gift officers in our area, and we could actually predict, the likelihood of a gift officer leaving after a year or two. So the applications for this are truly limitless, right? And today we're kind of focusing on specific fundraising and some specific examples, but I just want to share that this isn't the only area that analytics can be helpful for an organization, and it's truly can be transformative wherever you can apply this. So that's a little bit of kind of overview of what we're talking about today, a little bit of how IBM thinks about predictive analytics as it relates to fundraising. But I've always found in the fundraising space really finds most value from hearing from kind of peers and colleagues in the industry. So I'm happy to turn it over to Monique now, who's going to share the story of analytics success partnering with IBM and Ironside at Michigan State University.
Thank you, Alex. And I'm very pleased to be here with everyone today, and I hope that our story is one that folks can glean some insight from, but it really has been a journey, but it's been a great journey because of the things that we're able to accomplish. So I'm going to start this out by answering Alex's question, what is our passion? And what is our passion here in my team in MSU is really being able to inform strategies. Because big data analytics is a very, very large word, but at the end of the day, it's making sure that our frontline, our engagement officers are armed with insight and key information to inform their strategies and where they're trying to go. So what I want to talk to you today about is a few objectives here, how we here in AISDS, we are affectionately called, are harnessing our own structured data and also integrating unstructured social data to inform advancements, fundraising and engagement strategies, and also to predict outcomes. Strategic reasons why we chose to go with Cognos and IBM, and how these tools have been a game changer for us, and also helping us to really leverage the data, as we call it, to be able to just give great insight, and not just from what the data says, but also be able to visualize and show people where they are with their KPIs. And then last but not least, and this is what the sales guys never tell you, is really that I had to not just think about how these tools could help us, but what kind of team that I need to have here to be able, both by talent, by skills, but also by size, to be able to be an effective partner with our frontline officers, because that was critical for us to make sure I had the right resources in play as we started to roll out some of the things that we were doing so that we could continue to support the growing needs, because they were growing. So next slide, please. So tell you a little bit about who we are here at MSU to give us some perspective. Of course, we are the fundraising arm of MSU, here to support, and Alumni Association, but here to support the university in terms of time, talent, and dollars. There are 300 professionals on the MSU advancement staff, of which 70 of those professionals are on my staff. I am a full-service IT arm, analytics, and research team here in advancement. We do get some infrastructure and DBA support from Central IT, but we really are full-service here, and we really are not as heavily dependent on Central IT as some universities or some organizations are. We manage an Oracle transactional database of 1 million plus records. We're close to about 1.5 million now of MSU alumni, donors, friends, organizations, and all of their variable touch points from giving to activities, etc. And we are in the midst of a multi-billion-dollar campaign for the university that is scheduled to conclude June 30th, 2018. Next slide. So this is the fun stuff for us. So how are we harnessing our own data? It wasn't just about having the right tools, it was also how we had to transform some of our thinking, and really how we could leverage the power of our data by thinking about what we already know, industry trends. So we do a lot of reverse engineering projects here. There's a lot that we know. So just like a lot of advancement shops, we do a lot of wealth screens where we'll send out our database and we'll get a 10 to 20% hit, and they will build the models to assess wealth capacity. What we've done here is kind of taking a different approach, is that we kind of harness our own data, looking at those from parts of the industry, parts of the geography where folks live, high-paying degrees and salaries, and so we are looking at the data first, and we're using wealth screen data touch points to validate our assumptions. So that was a different way of thinking, whereby before we were reliant on a lot of these wealth screening companies to do the mining for us. We do the mining ourselves here, and we utilize some of those extra tools to validate our assumptions before we deploy those leads. We've also built what we believe is a very robust engagement model here. It has 177 touch points from all facets of the walk of life in our database, from giving trends to biographical trends, from prospect trends to volunteer engagement and activity trends. And we use this model to kind of help our gift officers look at where folks are engaged with the organization by their sheer affinity whereby if they are higher on that Affinity scale, they will give, and we've proven this through some predictive analysis, that they will give what you're asking them to. And so what you're seeing is on the screen here is just a little chart that I've pulled together and, out of Cognos, whereby we look at our open pool of prospects. These are suspects and leads that are out there geographically across the country by the capacity as we've figured out what the minimal potential is there, and then they can also pivot this view and look at those who have high affinity with MSU. That gives them the ability to kind of look at their portfolios in a way that where are those people that they immediately should start to look at making a major gift versus those they really want to, because of what they want them to do, where they can work to increase their affinity score and thereby get the gift that they're looking for. So the difference between having a $20 million prospect that will give you $1,000 annually or give you $5 million annually or give you that $20 million. So that's how when my prospect consultants are out there talking to the gift officers and advising them, this is exactly how we use this type of data. Next slide. Other things that we are doing here in terms of predictors is we're looking at proposal activity. So this is another example that I want to share today, was that how we are looking at past giving trends on proposal data by their targets and their KPIs, and we're kind of assessing the ask versus what was received in dollars, so what was granted. We do our best to take out episodic gifts because you will have those prospects that will give you that one-time big gift that will skew your numbers. And so we look at this and we kind of say, we're really trying to figure out where their saturation points are with their prospects. And so as opposed to saying that you will achieve these dollars every year, what can you minimally expect to achieve every year versus where you may have some growth potential on that scale. That's very important being in a campaign. And again, we marry that information with MSC, the affinity model changes, the deltas, so people who go up the affinity scale and who go down the scale. So when I'm providing my boss with the pyramid of prospects that we believe that will give in this campaign, our 80-20 rule, we kind of are trying to hone in on who those people are and what they will look like so that we can target our principal gift officers. Another thing that we really like to do, because this is really about our structured data, is also looking at those social media sites, which we brought down into SPSS, some of the social data to kind of look at generational data and then reverse engineering that back into our database. So who are those lookalikes, Gen X's, Gen Y's, et cetera, that look like these people, who feel like these people in our database, and should we be doing something different with those people as well? We do it the flip way too, whereby we bring down the tokens of people that we know into our system when we match those PITMs. We are also looking at making sure that what you're saying out there from consumer information, we do buy a lot of data, so market research data is what we see that you're doing, does that match up with how we can match you up here at MSU? So I know Alex gave you a chart at the beginning about the who, the what, and the whys. It's also about that right match. So you will find there will be people who have lots of money to give. You'll find people that are up and down on that affinity scale, but it's also about that sweet spot for us, where we're able to batch them up not just by what we think they can do for MSU, but based upon what they're doing out there in the world, where we should match them appropriately to inspire that passion gift. And that's really what we're looking for on the major gift side of the house, is that passion gift. What will really make them feel like they've done good. Next slide, please. So objective 2 here is, so why Cognos and SPSS for us? Well, part of it was just a very, very natural space for us to be in. Campus had a enterprise Cognos license. Between Cognos and SPSS, they are best in breed, hand down. And it's not just from the tools themselves, but also working with IBM and Ironside as partners, the ability to be able to leverage those relationships that were really trying to help us be successful. And that was very important for us, is to have a partner that was constantly thinking about, are the tools meeting your needs? What are your business strategies that you're trying to accomplish? And that's just been very, very wonderful for us. And we've had a lot of success from the dashboards, from reports, from the analytics that we've been able to roll out with Cognos. Our issue now is not about tools, it's about volume, because our staff want more and more and more. So keeping up with that pace, but the tools, I can't say hands down that I could say hands down they were the best tools for us to really invest in for the work that we're doing here in my shop. The other advantage that we had here was, and I'm sure many of you do as well, is the ability to buy versus build. We were really on a fast track. We were embarking on a campaign, which just 3 years ago in silent phase when I took over this role. And typically, you know, from the maintenance perspective, but also just we would have never been able to roll out the information the way that we have been able to do at such a fast pace. We were able to implement both of these tools in our shop within a year. And that was great for us because, again, we were trying to get away from the homegrown environment, but also to get the fundraisers to understand that we were partners who, if there's any part of the business that is a science, that is the role that we play, and we are the scientists. And so being able to have these tools so that we could show the power of the science that we're bringing to bear. And then the last but not least, they forced governance. We had 5 reported environments prior to the implementation of Cognos and then SPSS. It really forced us to get into a governance mode. Is in order to provide insights, you got to have good data. So garbage in, garbage out. So we really focused also a lot on data structures, governance, business policies. We have data dictionaries where when we're speaking with our customer base, we're talking the same language and one definition for each word versus several. And so really being able to build that discipline amongst what we were doing just further gave us credibility that the data, the insight we were providing was matched by the data behind it. Next slide. So resources, and I really do ask, I do encourage anyone who's considering this space to really think about resources. The growth in my team, I had to go from 1 data scientist on staff to now there are 10 professionals for the support arm that I support. And then also from the Cognos BI side, we went from 0 reports developers to we now have 4 and an associate director, and we are also in the process of now hiring a BI architect. And we also have other support teams, but this was really to support the SPSS and Cognos space. And then expertise was definitely needed. So we partnered with Ironside for the course of a year and a half, maybe 2 years, just in terms of trainings and mentoring. And then also, again, to get off the ground running very quickly, they were able to provide us augmented staff services that allow people to be embedded here in my shop with my team to deliver on the technical work so that we can get the tools off the ground, but then also be paired with my staff so that they will become Cognos and SPSS experts. And beyond that, we do lots of trainings with them as well as other mentoring opportunities, and they really do customize what we need for what we are looking for as opposed to us always working with a catalog of offerings. They do put together customized programs to fit your needs in terms of where your staff is in their development.
Thanks, Monique. I'm now going to hand over to Tim.
Yes, Monique, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. My name is Tim Kratek. I'm one of the principals at Ironside. I'll be pretty brief. I actually liked Alex's question earlier about passion, and I just want to comment on that. So, you know, from my perspective, my passion in Ironside in general, as a consulting firm, as a business partner of IBM, our passion is helping and enabling our customers adopt these technologies in a way that makes their businesses run more efficiently. And it's really kind of basic and simple. And you know, Monique and her team have done a fantastic job. And you know, we aided and assisted getting some of the things off the ground on the front end of it, but you know, help them to build the capability and expertise to run and expand and grow and, you know, be very, very successful. So we're happy about that. So in general, I'm going to just touch on our approach. You know, we've heard a bit about Michigan State's approach. In general, we have probably 5 or 6 customers that we've worked with around fundraising in a university setting. And, you know, there's really 4 kind of main business strategies that we focus on. One is market research and social media. We've spoken, Monique has spoken a bit about that and leveraging social media analytics to profile and understand both, you know, the ideal donors and then the profiles of those donors. the effectiveness of direct marketing and really looking not just at what do we do going forward, but how effective have our techniques and approaches been historically speaking. Leveraging financial information, and then also from a prospecting perspective. So taking the IBM technologies of PCI, which Jim is going to speak about in a bit, as well as SPSS Modeler, and then leveraging Cognos as the delivery mechanism to the business, really a powerful combination of technologies. From our perspective, Kristen will go to the next slide. For each of the strategies that I mentioned on the prior page, we go through a fairly standard methodology, and as Monique mentioned, the customization piece really, we're pretty adept at making our approach and our partnership fit the specific case of the customer or the university in this case, leveraging their existing teams, augmenting those teams, and in some cases helping them to add to the team, leveraging our expertise in that space to help our customers really in whatever way that makes sense for them. So laying out planning, really the data exploration is understanding kind of all the different data sources that are available, making recommendations about external data sources that might be relevant to the particular case, coaching, mentoring, and then obviously leading them from a knowledge transfer perspective, with the ability to live and sort of operate and evolve and iterate through with the tools, after our engagement with them has completed. From our perspective, for all of the different projects, we leverage the CRISP-DM methodology. Ultimately, it's a scientific approach, which leverages, for data mining, which has kind of the concepts of business understanding, data understanding, preparation, modeling, evaluation, and then deployment. So, it's regardless of the business problem, applying these core steps in this methodology, we found to be pretty effective in yielding a predictable result as you iterate through. One of the things that Monique can touch on, but we found is that obviously with a technology project, there's often a beginning and an end. I think with a data mining and a data modeling project, it's iterative, and as over time you work with the technology, you understand, you refine, you get stronger, your predictors get stronger, your affinity gets stronger, and you have more effective results. So there is a bit of an iteration that goes along with that. From a technology perspective, you guys have heard SPSS and BI and PCI. Ultimately, the core technologies of SPSS and Cognos BI are the engines which both do the the data mining, the predictive scoring, and then the business intelligence component of it is actually the delivery. So that's how a dashboard, Monique gave an example with the map with Chicago. That's an example of how a business user or a gift officer might actually access and interact with the models. Jim's going to talk a little bit about PCI, and ultimately what PCI is it's a combination of those technologies which are wrapped together, packaged together, and make it much easier to deploy. There's a database, there's connectors, which would have enabled Monique's process had they been available when she started a few years ago. So we're really excited of IBM's investments in this space, and the ability to ramp up and expand and leverage across the whole analytics portfolio for the purposes of gaining value and progress and efficiency in a much faster and while making less investments in technology. So with that point, Ironside as a partner to Michigan State as well as to IBM are excited to have the opportunity to talk to you today. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Jim Coyne. We can take it from here, Jim.
Okay, Jim, you should be all set now.
Thank you. So my name is Jim Coyne. I'm the Predictive Customer Intelligence Solution Leader for the North, and I appreciate everybody taking the time out today. I wanted to speak to, and some of this was touched on a little bit earlier, but I wanted to speak to a solution set that I think is central to fundraising. There's three legs to the offering. One includes the powerful and easy to use analytics. The second, like what was talked about, are connectors that are pre-built to allow you to analyze the data a little bit more quickly and with scale in mind, and then also to hand off to a potential campaign platform that might already be in place. And then the third part of the stool is our pre-built assets. So what IBM is offering are things like the data, algorithms, reports, dashboards, models, specific to things like affinity, acquisition, lifetime value, campaign response, segmentation, and sentiment. And the idea behind that is twofold. One, to help ensure quicker stand-up of the solution, and secondly, success. So to kind of bring those things to life, it helps to, what we're hoping to do is anticipate the behavior of individual donors. So not only segmenting, but trying to get right down to the individual. To deploy those predictive models and scores into an appropriate action, right? You want to take, a model with lift. That's one thing. What we want to do is help you to make that actionable, to generate, regenerate predictions on demand, cross-campaign optimization, and then pushing those things into business processes so that they're actionable, like I had mentioned earlier. And part of that is through things like web services, having it touch the fundraising touch points throughout your organization. Two, having the ability in BI dashboards and reports to measure effectiveness. And then the benefits are prepackaged integration, and this goes a little bit beyond what Monique has in place. She has the key tenets. We've just offered more prepackaged integration, jumpstart, faster time to deployment, and we think a licensing structure that's attractive. And so what we want to do today is help you to make things actionable. So if you're saying to yourself, you know what, this seems interesting, we would like to take the next step. I was able to get approval for resources to offer business value assessment against your consideration of the offering from IBM and Ironside. And the idea being that if you're saying to yourself, yep, you know what, I like this, but I'm going to have to afford it, and what we're willing to do is the work to quantify how you're doing things today and what those results look like compared to what we would propose, and those outcomes, so you can make an informed decision to move forward.
Jim, a question just came in for you. How does PCI integrate with Blackboard? Okay,
thanks for that. So, Blackboard is fairly prevalent in the amongst the donor community, and the way that we help to leverage that is through OLTP and web services connections, and that allows for the deployment or the benefits gleaned from the predictive models and scoring to be pushed into not only Blackboard, but like I mentioned earlier, the ability to have the results pushed into all the fundraising touch points, inclusive of Blackboard and beyond.
Jim, another question for you. Somebody asked, we don't have a lot of resources, especially technical ones. How easy is PCI to use?
Yeah, and Monique, you can comment on this as well. I'd appreciate it from a more practical perspective. But the offering is powerful, and with the analytics, we provide, we think, all the algorithms that you need to analyze and connect the dots to drive fundraising optimization. But we do it with a GUI-based platform. It doesn't require programming, and it consequently is typically used by business analysts to business folks, and as a result, you don't necessarily have to rely on IT, and that's typically well received.
I'm not sure. This is Monique. I'm not sure how I can add, because I'm not, as they said, I'm not using this. I can tell you that it just comes down to the skill set of your analyst, meaning your data scientist, in terms of using SPSS in general and their comfort level with, forget tool now, it's more their curiosity, their ability to do stats tool agnostic is really a big factor there. And then it goes also back to how you visualize. So we do intentionally do not even have our end users look at SPSS because that is too overwhelming for them. Instead, we have them look at the visual dashboards that we built using SPSS data.
Yeah, that's a good point to the latter. That you could have somebody like a business analyst to a data scientist doing the heavy lifting, if you will, but from your via the dashboards, you're making that information a little bit more practical for a business person to digest. No doubt.
Monique, this is Tim. We've gotten a few questions about the dashboards that your users access. I know that in one of your slides you had an example. Maybe, Jim, if you could kind of page back to that example with the map. And Monique, if you wouldn't mind just maybe describing a little bit more specifically how, what a user's looking for in that. It's a little bit further back. I think you have that piece right there, and then the one prior to it. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this is truly an image. We're using Cognos Active Reports where we built this. So if I could, I can show you. You love it if I show you. I'm sure you love it. But essentially, they can click on each one of those regions on that map, and the data changes. And there's also a prompt on that map that we have. What we have within the regions, major metros within the region, so they can literally click on that section and the data in the charts changes. It gives them counts of those people, and then they can go even down as low as, particularly when they're trip planning, and they love that, they can go down as low as where people are in certain regions within a particular metro, certain metros within a particular region, for their ability to be able to add fillers to their portfolio for visits. So that's what they're doing. It's a three-dimensional map, and the data changes on that map. But it's an active report in Cognos.
Jim, if you could go to the next slide down, right there. Monique, I think, again, I think this is kind of the same thing, maybe just a lower level of detail.
Yeah. So this is, and we have bursted this dashboard. It's basically called a prospect pipeline dashboard, and we bursted it by different colleges and units so that they can see their own data. There's also an overall view for our executive leaders. This kind of gives them an overall view of how their proposal asks, in a general sense, their proposal ask stands against where they are they acting at the right levels, and also are they achieving their targets. They can also get it down, as you can see, those are prompts in those boxes above, so they can see by development officer, by their proposal assignments, et cetera, to kind of get those views as well. So it's really kind of get you again to gauge. That's why you see Susan Lane, my dummy Susan Lane name there, is when she has certain targets that she has to meet in a given year. And within those targets, we're showing her where her targets are and where she is today as she looks at what she has to accomplish for that particular year. And we do that by all of our gift officers.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jim, another question came in. How can PCI help us measure campaign results?
Yeah, so it's a systemized approach to fundraising. So the last leg of what we do is offering scoring in real time or in batch of the right fundraising offer, and what we do is capture the results of that, and we measure that against the business rules that are taken into consideration, and we can then therefore measure the results. So it's a closed loop process, and those so it's kind of a self-learning system, if you will. It can continue to get better and better results in an automated fashion.